Before we get started, I just wanted to say that I was actually really proud of that jump cut. And welcome back to Solid Selection. My name is Draven Ray, and this is the channel where I scream into the void and hope the void answers. Our video today is about a corporation all of our American viewers will be aware of. It's a collection of stories that under any other circumstance might be viewed as libel, but in this case are available to anyone with the time to look them up. To the point where, once I jumped into the rabbit hole, I passed Dorothy on my way down. It goes deep. Deeper than I was even ready for. Okay, I'll admit it. I'm a sucker for things that companies do that seem like satire, but actually exist. These days, that's not super hard to find. I mean, on one hand, Wendy's is now famous as a social media god, Waffle House and Denny's are literally advertised as places where fights can and will break out for no real reason. And I really want to make a video at some point about the rivalry between Burger King and McDonald's. Keep in mind, I didn't look any of these examples up, that's just what I'm pulling from the top of my head. Let me throw a secret stunner into the ring though, that I believe can compete with all the rest of them. A company so strange, in its marketing, their own customers have come in expecting them to develop TARDIS-like technology to keep up with demand, and a church has gotten hit with a lawsuit because they didn't think these same customers were smart enough to tell the difference. Putting it like that, I'm not too mad at them there, but what gets me is that all of this is in spite of the fact that their main claim to fame is as a place college kids go to recover after a night out because the line at Taco Bell was too long. Some companies have an identity crisis from time to time. And then there's IHOP. A company that seems to wake up every few years and just decide, what if we did something completely unhinged? These absolute legends have proven time and time again that they will try absolutely anything, to the point where I'm convinced it's not even a ploy to sell food anymore. They just want to never let us know what's coming. Become ungovernable. And I'm here for it. Go off, Queen. I should point out here that, as I alluded to before, this was originally going to be a much simpler video about the stuff with the church. It's a story I heard back in high school and I found it really interesting. So I wanted to do a little digging and find out the details. As you may have guessed by the intro though, yeah, this goes deep. So instead of doing that, today we're going to be diving into the weirdest, wildest, and most confusing stunts that this restaurant chain has ever pulled. We will, of course, have to start with the most infamous disaster, seeing as I already mentioned it twice in the intro. IHOP versus IHOP.
I'm not very religious, personally.
I truly wish that I was, but my own delusions of grandeur get in the way too often to focus on anybody else's. That being said though, basic respect or even simple tact and logic, I believe, should tell the majority of people not to take a church to court. Without, a solid reason. This escapade begins and ends in 2010. IHOP, the pancake one, filed a lawsuit against the International House of Prayer, which, despite its name, only seems to have one location. They're stationed in Kansas City, Missouri. And that's something I've always thought was pretty cool. Not in this one particular instance, but on multiple levels. On one hand, there are way too many first whatever churches in the world, to the point where one of the most amazing naming conventions I've ever seen is Second Unitarian, once upon a time. But also, the level of pomp for a church, which I should add that at the time appears to have been built into a strip mall in KC. For this one, I can't decide if it was named on a dream or just by a pastor with a solid sense of humor, but either way, I love humans sometimes. IHOP, however, was much less of a fan, claiming that they were infringing on their brand name and blocking their shine or whatever. Because apparently there may have been some confusion in the mind of the average customer between a 24-hour breakfast joint and your average religious ministry. The lawsuit didn't last very long, as IHOP, the pancake one again, tried to quietly drop or allegedly, presumably, settle out of court a few months later, probably realizing that suing a church isn't exactly the best PR move. But, for a brief time, a pancake empire legitimately did wage war against prayer. The results of this were a little mixed. On one hand, IHOP, the Holy One, did in fact change its name. They now go by IHOP KC. or International House of Prayer, Kansas City. So you could call this a win for corporate America. On the other hand, remember how I said they were located at a strip mall? Ooh, Dolly, not anymore! Whatever IHOP settled for hasn't been publicly released, unfortunately, and they haven't actually claimed to have given the church anything at all. But because I couldn't believe that this was a literal strip mall church stationed next to a Buffalo Wild Wings when I originally looked this up, I had to search them on Google Earth. I'll probably try to put the image as the thumbnail on this video if the YouTube gods allow, but they are a mega church now, as in proper cathedral levels. Hats off to you, IHOP KC. I'm gonna say that the prayers were answered. Next up, we have something I hadn't actually heard about before. The IHOB scandal, or what they call the IHOP fiasco. We're moving forward a few years now to 2018. IHOP decided it was time to undergo a bit of a rebranding and change their name to the International House of Burgers. They hyped it up with cryptic tweets, and they flipped their logo with a lowercase b, as in they didn't even bother shelling out the money to have it look semi-professional. They started pushing their burger menu hard, but they weren't expecting the kind of backlash they received when other fast food chains, including Wendy's, The Legend, and Burger King, wasted no time trolling the company for pretending to be something that they weren't. I do just want to take a second and go over the best 2 Wendy's tweets that I saw here, because they're glorious. So the first one was a caption that says, "I can't wait to try a burger from a place that decided pancakes were too hard." The other was pretty simple. It was just a tag with a caption that said, "Hang in there," that they put on a poster for One World about inclusivity and being comfortable in your own skin. Fast food chain drama is a special kind of stupid, and I cannot get enough of it. There are a lot more, obviously, but this actually continued long enough that eventually IHOP began claiming that the whole thing was a stunt, and decided to go back to business as usual while pretending nothing happened. Then not even a full year later, in 2019, we have the Pancizza, trademark pending, which was apparently a cross between a pancake and a pizza. Picture a large round pancake, like a bakangge, which are those Korean stuffed pancake things, only not as good and with nothing inside of it except starch and broken dreams. It was served in a pizza box and designed to be shared like a pizza. No one really knew though, including IHOP, what kind of meal this would be included in. And all I can think of when I picture this is a poor line cook trying to find room on a flat top while desperately holding a water bottle that he's refilled 20 times in the last hour to drench the damn grill down after every order, because there is no way on earth that didn't stick at every single freaking opportunity. Caught myself there. Meanwhile, his manager is just like, I know, I am so sorry. Also, Bruce, because his name is Bruce for some reason, we have 3 more orders and this one's late. Because IHOP corporate in their eternal wisdom also promised that wait time would be the same as it would for a standard sized pancake, and that's not a joke, by the way. After they had advertised this during the Super Bowl, they made sure to note in their restaurants one of the selling points was that, and I quote, "It would be the same time to get out a pancake no matter the size." Moving on, I'm going to leave the fluid dynamics questions where I found them. Let's talk about the time that IHOP started to make an effort to compete with fast food chains by launching what they called IHOP and Go, which, on its surface, is just your standard grab-and-go concept. Setting aside, though, that it sounds weirdly sexual to me, it was, of course, supposed to make IHOP more convenient. The public, understandably, though, kind of figured that they had missed what is ostensibly their entire shtick. When you're marketed as a sit-down diner, people may actually want to sit down. I wouldn't have probably included this on the list either way though, except for the fact that they ended this whole plan in November of 2019, just 4 months before COVID. Then, during COVID, they didn't even try to revamp the idea. As you would expect, the whole thing just sort of flopped, but like guys, really, you had the technology. The drive-through windows were already built. Then we get to the pandemic itself, and 2020 was a wild year for most of us, myself included. And with everything going on, I can't blame this story for not hitting the news. But IHOP partnered with a brewery called Keegan Ales to create 2 kinds of beer. The first was called Pumpkin Pancake Stout, which honestly doesn't sound awful, solid beer name. The second one, and I swear to God this is true, was actually called IHOPs. Gonna let that sink in for a second. Now both of them, from what I read, were brewed with actual pancake batter. It was a limited edition release with the promise that if it caught on, they would order more, but unfortunately it never became a menu staple, which makes sense with everything else that was going on. It's another example of wrong place, wrong time. And like I said at the beginning, the idea that exists in the public zeitgeist of IHOP in the first place is of somewhere where people go to recover from those kind of nights, and I'm not entirely sure if you can qualify this as them leaning into that image, or just going, no, we're not your morning after, we're the whole night out. It is good to see a place that takes you out, gets you feeling some kind of way, and then still makes you breakfast in the morning after. And I know it might sound like I'm exaggerating, acting like IHOP was trying to compete with bars and such, and you could be forgiven for thinking that, but I am truly not sensationalizing at all. That same year, as in also in 2020, this time directly after the COVID pandemic, IHOP introduced IHOPy Hour, in a direct attempt to compete with bars, to sell a beer that no one knew existed, made with pancake batter because of course it was. Gotta stay on brand. Anyway, after all of that, let's go ahead and switch gears. Now let's talk about a couple of times that customers just directly trolled IHOP for no reason whatsoever. I originally thought the lowest hanging fruit here would be that while IHOPs, the company, not the beer, aren't generally set up in bad areas, there's almost a reverse gentrification effect that happens when one appears. Anyone living anywhere near one knows exactly what I mean, and because of that, it's boring. So instead, I'm going to start with a specific instance of a dude who thought that the aliens were providing IHOP's coffee. Don't get me wrong, plenty of companies over the years have toted unlimited coffee refills. You need some backstory here. They once aired a commercial featuring a soundtrack from Doctor Who and a coffee pot that was bigger on the inside. Now, a customer in Philadelphia took this literally and walked into a restaurant fully expecting to be presented with TARDIS-style technology. He gets asked how he thought that would even work, and his immediate response, going from screaming to absolutely calm and collected, he just says, well, the aliens did it. For the life of me, I can't figure out if this was a joke or maybe even a stunt done by the company itself, but that had me snort laughing. Another thing in the opposite direction that actually does tie back to the economics that I mentioned before is the unlimited pancake menu. And I'm sure you can see exactly where this is going. According to IHOP themselves, the record for the most pancakes eaten in one sitting is 113, set by a guy in 2016 at the Silver Dollar Pancake Eating Competition in Chico, California, named Matt Stoney. This presumably made the rest of the Stoneys very proud. They do not have a record of how many pancakes have been ordered at one time, and I have 2 confessions to make here. The first is that the longest I have put pancakes into the fridge that I later ate was about a week and a half. They were a little bit soggy, but not the worst thing ever. The second is that I have known of people who have met people who have gone to a buffet with cargo pants and a Tupperware before, allegedly, because 3 orders of distance, and for legal reasons, that's not a recommendation. That's not even what the issue is, though. Employees have apparently dreaded these events so much that there are actually reports of a max exodus because of how chaotic they can get. Which, considering that IHOP mainly hires people that are still in school, the basis of applicants is generally full in May, and then everybody ends up quitting by July. The special ends, by the way, at least last year in September, which, and I have absolutely no proof of this, is why every fight that I've ever seen in an IHOP parking lot has been in late July or early August. I mean, it's got to be partly psychological, but beyond that, economics, man. It's crazy. There are a bunch of other examples that I could use, and I'm sure that anyone watching this probably has one. The hardest part of writing this list was narrowing down to a manageable degree. I will throw in one final example, though, that I couldn't extrapolate well enough on to create an entire section for, and that's IHOP movie tie-ins. Let me know which one of these is your favorite. First, we have Minions Pancakes, which are a bright moldy yellow with a banana flavor, but for some reason a weird aftertaste reported. Second, we have the Grinch's Green Pancakes, literally just pancakes dyed green. Presumably with packaging thrown in, I don't know, I wasn't around for this one. Or, the Addams Family menu, all black everything. And before you think, wouldn't that just look burnt? The answer is yes. Honorable mentions go to milkshake flavored pancakes, which I would definitely eat, root beer float pancakes, jelly donut pancakes, Lucky Charms pancakes, Captain Crunchberries pancakes, and pancake batter made with beer. I touched on this last one earlier, but it bears repeating just for the simple fact that this is something that actually happened from an international restaurant chain, possibly in an attempt to cut cost away from their other idea, beer made with pancake batter. Look, I know that when you hear stories like this, it's easy to pass a company like that off as a bunch of morons, but at the end of the day, I have a lot of respect for these guys, or anybody that isn't afraid to take risk. And they're still in business somehow, so it seems to be working. Obviously, not all of their stunts have been successful. Getting rid of delivery right before COVID was a terrible business decision, no matter how you look at it. But the old adage is still true. All press is good press. People don't look for things they've never heard of, and we are still talking about it. Whether the time they changed their name to IHOP was a prank or not, I have to admit that it was effective enough that in this script, every time that I needed to write IHOP, as in the name of the company, I used a lowercase p as a little private joke to myself. And in conclusion, I am thankful for free speech, I'm thankful for this platform, and if anyone from IHOP ever watches this, you make delicious food, and please don't sue me. Now, for those of you watching this instead of just listening in, first of all, thank you. It's very appreciated to see my work recognized. Our stats for today will be in the description of this video. But
today, in the world of Skyrim, we found ourselves in the village of Riverwood, and were bothered by some shopkeeper who wanted some kind of golden claw. After agreeing to his request to get him off our back, we immediately didn't do that, and instead went to Whiterun. There was a giant fighting people in front of the city. And even though we helped them, apparently they just wanted to pick a fight because they immediately started swinging at us. They looked really tough and we ran away. Later, after our excursions through town, we decided to rob the palace. In that endeavor we found an elven sword! Then got caught by a child. Feeling like we should get out of town, we accepted a quest to find some guy's family heirloom. We are now fighting for our lives. Find out more in the next episode in our solid selection.
anyway, if you enjoyed this deep dive into IHOP's bizarre history, you should subscribe. Leave a comment if you feel like it, don't be a stranger, and catch me again soon with another solid selection breakdown of the weird and wacky things that get me up in the morning. And next time you visit IHOP, be gentle with the staff. They're doing their best.